and welcome to another booktube video from me, Lauren, from Lauren and the Books. I hope you're all having a lovely day. Today, it's a book tag. It might be slightly late in the old January to be doing the New Year book tag, but I really like the questions, and I thought I would give it a go because it is the new year, and I still feel like, I mean, for me, I love January. I feel like I've got real bad deja vu because I've been saying this all January to anyone that will listen. I love new lists, I love new goals, I love things like that. But really, it takes me a couple of sort of months to settle into the year. And it's not really until March that I've established sort of like what my New Year's resolutions or things like that are going to be. So yeah, it's the New Year book tag today. It's 6 questions, and I'll get kicking with them. So the first one is, how many books are you planning to read in 2020? And that question has been answered in my New Year's reading resolutions video, but the answer is like, I've got no target. And this seems to work best for me. For the past few years, I set myself a target of 1 on Goodreads, and I've read more like the years that I've set myself a target of 1 than I have when I set myself a target of 50, 52, 100, 150. Last year I read 185 books, which is unbelievable, including some like pretty sizable ones as well. So yeah, there's no target, there's no drama. I just read as much as I want or as little as I want. The only thing I will say is that if anything, maybe my target will be, maybe I will end up reading less than 185 books because I've got plans to read some bigger books this year. I think when you set a target, I always think, oh, well, I don't want to waste myself like 10 days reading that book when like I could be reading 3 sort of paperbacks in that time. So I've got plans to read some bigger books, and one of the questions alludes to some of those bigger books a bit later on. So yeah, probably less than 185, but I really couldn't say. Number 2 is, name 5 books you didn't get to in 2021 but you would like to read in 2022. So the first one is one that I actually started in 2021 and then stopped at page 140 because it was December and I needed to start reading Christmas books, and that's this one, Sky Day by Leonie Ross. I was very much enjoying this. This is set on an archipelago, love saying archipelago of Poppy show, and on this archipelago people there have things that they call cores, which are powers. So it might be a power that relates to, that's helpful to you in some way or relates to your job, like one of the characters we're following here is able to flavour food through his hands, but it might be a less helpful cause or just something completely random. But yeah, so I started listening to it and very, very much enjoyed it, but as I said, stopped, so need to get back to it. But because I can't really remember the sort of intricacies of the plot, I think I might listen to it on audio, so I think when I go back to it, I'll listen to the audiobook of it. But yeah, very much enjoying that so far. So that's the first one that I need to get to that I didn't finish in 2021. Now next up is a whole series. So you will know that I read Anne of Green Gables. Well, I've read it twice now. I read it for the first time in 2020 and it was one of my favourite books of the year then. And then last year I listened to the audiobook of it. It was a lovely audiobook narrated by Rachel McAdams, and very much enjoyed that. And in 2020, David's sister bought me this lovely collection of Anne of Green Gables books. So I've read Anne of Green Gables, not this actually audition actually, the one I read was the vintage, I think it's called Sisterhood edition, beautiful front cover. But I've got all of these, so I've got Anne of Avonlea, Anne of the Island, Anne of Windy Poplars, Anne's House of Dreams and Anne of Ingleside. I think that's the order in which they go, I hope so. But yeah, so I must get round to reading some more Anne books, because I love Anne of Green Gables so much and loved revisiting it last year. So maybe I'll start again from the top and just work my way through. But yeah, very much enjoyed Anne of Green Gables and need to read more of them. Then, as I said, I'm planning on reading some bigger books this year. And one big book that I've had for a few years now that David's mum got me for Christmas one year, and I've been sort of just dancing around really, not really coming up with the time to read it, and that's Middlemarch by George Eliot. And it's a big old chunky thing. I mean, it's one thing a book being, oh my god, a book being 838 pages, but a book being 838 pages and a classic, that's pretty intensio, isn't it? So yeah, I think I need to dedicate some good time to Middlemarch, but would love to read it. I don't even know what it's about, and these cloth-bound classics, they don't often have a blurb on it. So yeah, if anyone can give me in the comments a sort of potted plot of what happens in Middlemarch, because I literally have no idea. But yeah, I've been meaning to read that for a while. Then a book that I bought last year and was very sort of apt for last year and even the year before, that I must get round to reading, and that is Many Different Kinds of Love, a story of life, death and the NHS by Michael Rosen. Michael Rosen is a poet and a writer. I'm sure he's a poet. And he got COVID in, I think it was in 2020, and become very, very unwell with it and got admitted to hospital. And this is his sort of diaries of the time when he was in a coma, unwell with COVID. Unwell seems like such a small word, doesn't it, to use when someone's in a coma with COVID. And this is the diaries that his nurses have written in. So I've just opened here and it's like done in diary entries, and also Michael's writing herself in there. But this is from, it was in 2020. This is 19th of May 2020, day 43. Hi Michael, my name is Wincy, one of the nurses here in the intensive care unit. I've looked after you several times on your early days here in the unit when you were critically unwell. And yeah, so different people writing in here all the time, and then his words. And yeah, I want to read this. I want to read this. So yeah, I didn't get round to that. And then the last one is one that I got sent from the publisher, and it's, I think maybe because it's sat sort of on its side here, but also because I love the front cover and I just keep looking at it, and I know that I wanted to read it last year. I think I put it on my TBR a couple of times last year and just never got round to it, and that's Blackwater Sister by Zen Cho. And this is about Jessamine, a girl who's leaving her life in America to move back to Malaysia, where she's from, sort of reluctantly, and then when she gets there she starts hearing a voice in her head, which is from her Ma, which is her late grandmother. And yeah, it just, I don't know, I just every time I look at it I kept thinking the whole way through 2021 I want to read that, and then never got to it. So yeah, those are 5 books, although Anna, there's some big reads in there, isn't there? Then question 3 is, what genre do you want to read more of in 2022? Now, I don't know if it counts as a genre, but as I've mentioned, bigger books. I'm keen to read bigger books in 2022. Also, translated fiction. Translated fiction is something that I always tend to, I always have big designs to read translated fiction, and I just never get round to it. So yeah, I need to start doing that. But again, I don't want to set myself too many challenges of like, you must read a translated fiction every month, because I know I don't stick to that sort of thing. So it's out there now. I want to read more translated fiction. And then lastly, historical fiction. 2 of my top 4 books from last year, but I imagine quite a lot in the top 10, were historical fiction, and particularly like very, very well researched historical fiction. So the works of Sarah Waters, for example, the book The Other Bennet Sister by Janice Hallett, which is a retelling of Pride and Prejudice from Mary's point of view. And I just had such a great time reading these books, and other books I'd read throughout the year, like more recent historical fiction, things that are set in the 60s, in the 50s. I just had such a great time reading historical fiction last year, and it's not always a genre I sort of lean towards or gravitate to. So yeah, so I'd love to read a bit more historical fiction, just because everything I read last year that was historical fiction I absolutely loved. Number 4 is, name 3 non-book related goals for 2022. So as I said, I normally sort of settle into the year and decide on my sort of New Year's resolutions or 10 goals for 10 months. I've done this the past few years and put those out in March, which gives me the rest of the year. Now, I also said this in my reading resolutions video, just because I'm saying I want to do something I don't beat myself up over it if I don't manage to do it. But I have got 3 goals that I would like to do. The first one is I got a whole host of craft kits for Christmas. I've got one there which is a crochet kit. I got a wool pulling kit. I don't really know what you would call that, where you make like felting. I got 2 embroidery kits. I got an origami kit. I got a macrame kit. So that, I think, is 6 kits. So I would like to potentially do one of those a month, just to keep me going, and then see how I get on. And then if I want to spend the last half of the year doing a few more of these, or like get myself a few more kits. But I'm getting married in December, and a few things that I need to do for the wedding involve sort of crafts and things like that. So yeah, I'd like to get a bit more crafty in 2022. I'm also doing something in relation to us getting married in 2020 at the end of the year. Is I'm doing an almost no spend year. So I sort of did a focus in on like no fast fashion a couple of years ago, and I'm really pleased with my journey that I've been on and my progress with that. My spending on clothes was absolutely shocking, and I used to buy new clothes just everywhere, particularly in supermarkets, because I went to the supermarket like 3 or 4 times a week, and I'd always come home with some clothes or a new pair of shoes or a new bag or just stuff that I didn't need, and just buying cheap clothes in cheap shops. And I sort of targeted that a couple of years ago, 3 or 4 years ago. I started buying a lot more second-hand clothes, started buying clothes that I knew that were going to last me, I wasn't going to wear once, and my whole outlook on fashion has really changed, and I'm so delighted with myself for doing that. So, but I wanted to go one step further and start looking at other stuff that I spend a lot of money or time on, not time but like money on, and I decided to do a sort of almost no spend year. So I've decided that, like, I'm not going to say it's a no spend year, because that for me is it's unmanageable. Setting myself a goal that is never going to happen is unmanageable. So I thought to myself, if I'm thinking of something that I want to buy throughout the month or need to buy, then I will make a note of it, and on payday I'm allowed to buy one thing. So it might be a book. I haven't honoured pre-orders because I've done a few pre-orders, so they don't count on books, sorry. But yeah, so if there's a book I want, or a new top I want, or I'm going to a wedding or something like that in September, then I'd have to buy that in August payday, or things like that. So yeah, if there's something I want for the home, then I've got to wait until payday and then pick something that I want. This doesn't account for like gifts and things like that. I can buy gifts and stuff, but yeah, this is sort of stuff that will be coming to my gain. So that means hopefully at the end of the year I'll have 12 things that I've bought that I've really actually needed or really wanted, and feel like I've sort of not even worked towards them. Well, I guess I have worked for them. I've worked for them to earn that money. But like, yeah, so that's my plan for another spend. But there'll be more details of that, although that was a lot of detail, in March when I do my 10 goals for 10 months. And then lastly, something I did last year, I want to watch 100 new to me films, which I did complete last year, and I made a video about it. I will link it down below. And I quite enjoyed that, because I don't always think, oh yeah, let's watch a film. Like David would always watch a film, but I'm much more into watching like episodes of stuff or like shorter things. So yeah, when I'm saying this, I'm filming this on, what date is it today, David? The 7th?
7th.
I haven't watched a film yet this year,
yet,
and you need to watch sort of two a week to keep on top of it. So yeah, maybe I'll have a little film watching sesh. Number 5 is, what's a book you've had forever that you still need to read? Now this is a collection. This is 4 books that I've had forever that I still need to read, and I've got a bit of a like, well, this is just read the stuff you buy, Lauren, is what I'm saying. But I bought, or I've been given, or like for birthday presents and stuff, I've got 4 Persephone books. I've never read a Persephone book in my life, and I bought, I got one for, oh, this one I got for a gift from my cousin Laura years ago, The Wise Virgins by Leonard Woolf. Then I've got a couple I bought second hand, and I think I've got one that I might even have bought in the shop. Oh, this one was bought second hand, Miss Bungle Married by D. Stevenson, and then Lettice Delmer by Susan Miles, and Still Missing by Beth Gutchen. So yeah, these are books that I've had for such a long time, and I've absolutely meant to read them. I just never got round to it. I don't think it helps that my grey books are tucked away behind this. I mean, this chair isn't normally here, but they're in like my bottom, the bottom part of my shelf, which I don't sort of really browse very much, because I'm much more likely to browse things that I'm up at this level. But yeah, would like to have just read one of these bloody Persephones by the end of the year, please, Lauren. And then the last question is a simple question of one word. One word you're hoping 2022 will be. Joyful. That's a good word, isn't it, to have? David, one word you're hoping 2022 will be?
Creative.
Creative, David says. But yeah, joyful, I hope. So yeah, here's the New Year book tag. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you had a little look at the books that I'm planning on reading this year and things that I'd like to get to. And I'll see you all again soon for another Richie video. Goodbye!